Once upon a time, in the center of ancient Rome, where brutality is the order of the day and the respect for human life was almost absent. Being a Christian was a very serious offense that could lead a person to an agonizing death. Imagine this, a cauldron, which is a very large pot with 3 legs standing almost 6 feet on 3 large stones with large firewood burning under it endlessly. A drum of cooking oil was then introduced into the pot up to a 3/4 full. Then the men tending the fire kept pushing and setting the firewood well to enhance burning, and soon a great fire was burning under the pot and producing great heat, and within minutes, the oil was boiling hot ready for frying. The irony is they were not going to fry any meat for this occasion. No, they were going to fry a human, and fry the human alive. This is a very hard incident to describe, so let's stop here and start the story from the beginning. In the early days, Christianity started as a small group within the Jewish community. Right from the start, there were disagreements among the people. Before Saul changed his ways and became Paul, he used to harm the early Christians who were also Jewish. It's said in the Bible that about a year after Jesus was killed, a man named Stephen was killed for not following Jewish rules, and Paul, who was watching, didn't try to stop it. Later, in the Bible, Paul talks about all the hard times he went through after he changed his beliefs. He mentions how he was hurt many times by Jewish people, whipped 5 times, beaten with rods 3 times, and even stoned once. In 41 AD, Herod Agrippa gained the title of King of the Jews, expanding his territory to include lands previously ruled by Herod Antipas and Philip. This move effectively revived the kingdom of Judea established by Herod the Great years before. Herod Agrippa sought to win favor with his Jewish subjects, but continued the persecution of Christians. During this time, James the Great was killed, St. Peter narrowly escaped death, and other apostles fled to safety. After Herod Agrippa's death in 44 AD, Roman procurators took over governance, maintaining a period of relative peace until 62 AD. However, when the procurator Porcius Festus passed away, a power vacuum emerged. Seizing the opportunity, the high priest Ananus ben Ananus launched an attack on the church and executed James the Just, who was then leading the Christian community in Jerusalem. According to the New Testament, Paul faced imprisonment by the Romans multiple times and was even stoned by the Pharisees, who left him for dead on one occasion. Eventually, he was taken as a prisoner to Rome. Peter and other early Christians also experienced imprisonment, beatings, and persecution. The first Jewish rebellion, triggered by the Roman killing of 3,000 Jews, resulted in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. This event marked the end of Second Temple Judaism and paved the way for the gradual emergence of Rabbinic Judaism. Claudia Setzer suggests that Jews did not perceive Christians as distinctly separate from their own community until at least the middle of the 2nd century. However, many scholars argue that the parting of the ways occurred much earlier, with theological distinctions emerging immediately. During the era of Second Temple Judaism, there were multiple expressions of Jewish identity. After the destruction of the temple, one path evolved into Rabbinic Judaism, while another path developed into Christianity. Christianity's core belief centered around Jesus of Nazareth, whom they regarded not only as the promised Messiah but also as the Son of God, offering a pathway to God and divine blessings to both Jews and non-Jews. John served the church he loved and died in peace in the city of Ephesus, unlike his apostolic comrades. He did not, however, lead a quiet life. John was one of Jesus' 12 disciples at the time of his death. He also wrote 5 New Testament books, the Gospel of John, the letters 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelation, traveled much, and took part in the early years of the church in Jerusalem. While John's list of achievements was undoubtedly remarkable, he was probably the first to admit that everything he had accomplished in life was nothing compared to what Jesus had done for him. John's character summary reveals a great deal about how Jesus transforms people's lives. John's survival among the other apostles is indicative of the particular kind of suffering he went through. John endured suffering and survived while the other disciples all perished. John's life exhibited the traits of a martyr, even if he was not one in the strict sense. He was a model sacrifice that may be imitated. And as we'll see, God's intervention saved him from becoming a true martyr on multiple times. Among the angrier disciples of Jesus were John and his brother James. A distorted image of John is frequently produced by artistic interpretations and first-hand accounts. He was the disciple that Jesus liked, to be sure, but it didn't make him especially endearing. More likely, he was a typical rough-and-tumble, diligent, brazen fisherman of his era lacking in social graces. It's likely that Jesus referred to John and his brother as sons of thunder, more as a loving nickname than as a compliment. Early in his narrative, Mark mentions that unique moniker, 3 verse 17, suggesting that their qualities were apparent right away. They definitely lived up to the moniker. Once, following their observation of Jesus' transfiguration on the mountain, Peter, James, and John got into a telling disagreement about who was the greatest among them within the group of disciples. John said that he and the others had confronted someone who was casting out demons in the name of Jesus, after Jesus had neutralized that argument. Luke 9 verse 49 states that they had urged the guy to cease, because he does not follow with us. John was surprised by Jesus' desire that others be encouraged to exercise the authority bestowed upon them in Jesus' name, as he had anticipated Jesus to grant him approval. However, the competition for status and power was far from ended. The last voyage to Jerusalem and an event in Samaria, a town where Jesus was not welcomed, are promptly described by Luke. "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" John and James offered to take action, anxious to demonstrate their perceived increased authority among the Lord's followers. Luke 9 verse 54. It's possible that Jesus turned so they could see his face but said nothing, as we are just told that he turned and rebuked them for this idea. Perhaps the gaze was a more painful correction than the words. The discipleship process Jesus spent a great deal of effort and time practicing with the earliest disciples, and it persisted all of the apostles' lives. John had to learn the hard way of love. He is disclosing what changed him from a son of thunder to a son of love when he continuously uses the name Jesus loved to describe himself in his story. John 13 verse 23. He was loved by Jesus. John's thirst for the truth never went away. It seems clear from even a cursory study of his gospel and the 3 letters of John that the author was an ardent defender of the truth. However, what comes across even more from John's writings is that he was a man of love. By the conclusion of his life, John had condensed his teaching into a single, gentle command. Children, love one another, according to ancient witnesses like Eusebius. It seems that was his go-to response whenever he was asked to say something or offer an opinion. When questioned about it, he said that if that one command was properly followed, then everything else would take care of itself. The beloved disciple, mentioned in the New Testament, was the brother of James the Great. He played a significant role in spreading Christianity, establishing churches in Smyrna, Pergamos, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, and Thyatira. According to tradition, the Roman Emperor Domitian ordered that the Apostle John be boiled to death in oil, but miraculously, John continued to preach from within the pot without being harmed. On another occasion, John was compelled to drink poison, yet as promised in Mark 16 verse 18, it did not harm him. Despite these attempts on his life, John, who was leading the church in Ephesus at the time, was eventually banished to Patmos in AD 97. John's survival through these trials was attributed to God's plan for him. While on the island of Patmos, secluded in a cave, John received a profound vision. This vision became the book of Revelation, a powerful testament that would shape the course of evangelism throughout the church age. In Revelation, John prophesied about the events surrounding the return of Christ, eagerly anticipating his arrival. Even to this day, John's writings continue to inspire believers, encouraging them to eagerly await the glorious return of Christ. 2 years after his exile, Emperor Domitian passed away, and John returned to the church in Ephesus. Remarkably, he outlived all the other disciples, becoming the oldest among them. John peacefully passed away in Ephesus at the age of 80, after dedicating over half a century to serving Jesus' church with unwavering dedication. Remarkably, he was the only apostle to have escaped a violent death. Thank God for intervening to save him. It very well could have been his death sentence to be banished to Patmos. Following the death of Emperor Domitian, who had banished John to Patmos, John was returned to Ephesus and held captive for a period of 2 years. It is reported that he was forced to consume poison yet remained uninjured and died peacefully in the end. Thank you for your support.